they're looking at what issues are being discussed, do they affect me, and they don't necessarily think that much about whether it's a special meeting or regular meeting. It's just, is this an issue that, I have, that affects me and I'd like to make my opinions known.
Well, it's our
Do
uniform
we,
policy.
on the cards that we have, are they all restricted to unfinished business, or any of them?
I don't have any cards. I don't know. I just saw people putting in, I just wanted to make sure that,
We have two cards on 3A, dealing with street lighting, and one on non-agenda items.
we don't have public comment on items we're not voting on, so that's why we don't do comments. It's not because the policy is anything else other than we're not voting on the issue, so therefore public participation is not done on that. Unfinished business items we are voting on, and that's why we can open up public comment. That's just our policy. It's been there for 30 years, so. Do we have any cards on items 4 or 5?
Not yet, no.
Okay. So I would suggest if we do get any cards on items 4 or 5, that we open it up for public comments. Again, it's on the items listed under items 4 and 5. And 5 is the new one, by the way, the notification letter. Okay. Thank you all very much. Update, let's see, moving back to updates. 3B, Water Utility Department Annual Report for fiscal year 2014. Larry, don't slip away. You're the star of the next 2 items.
Madam Mayor,
And you're gonna make me say speak up 3 times, so,
well, I will try not to.
okay.
For the record, Larry Johnson, I am the Water Utility Director, and I appreciate the opportunity to just provide you an update concerning the 2014. So we'll just, start right in with this. Basically, the intent of this annual report is that the combined electric and water utility, as you know, celebrated its 100th year anniversary in 2013. Essentially, the water utility was separated in 2014, and so this is the first year of operation of the water utility as a separate department. Essentially to allow both departments to provide a higher level of management attention to both of those business unit areas. The water utility includes the administration, water plant, water distribution, sewer collection, and then the wastewater pumping functions for both water and sewer functions within the city. Has a total staffing of 28 people in the water area and 15 in the sewer area. These are just some general photos. You've seen the 2-inch water lines in the past, which is one of our concerns as far as the water distribution system. To the right at the top is just an overview of the water plant, showing the elevated storage tank there. On the right at the lower side gives you a little more closer view of the lime softening plant, which is in operation. And then on the left hand at the lower side is the reverse osmosis trains that were installed and began operation in 2011. One of the things about the water system operation that I think the city has a right to be very proud of is that you really have an independent, sustainable water supply for the long term, and that it does provide 2 regional water resources for the use of the city, which is very important given the need for flexibility now and in the future. That includes the reverse osmosis plant, and the 2 water sources are basically the surface water or superficial aquifer, and then which is a renewable resource, which is basically provided and renewed every year as you get rains in the summer. And then you have the Floridan aquifer, which is a deep brackish water source, which is a source of water that is not affected by droughts and short-term issues that we have during the dry season. So it gives us a lot of benefit and a lot of flexibility as we move forward. Using that system, we have been able to essentially stabilize the saltwater intrusion at the plant, which has been a concern for many years. That was done through reduced surficial water use. And we are constructing, we've actually completed construction of well 16, which is west of the I-95 corridor and just north of Lake Worth Road on Detroit Avenue. We finished rehabilitation of our well 9 to provide additional water flows for that well. And we have abandoned 2 of the older wells, which are further to the east of I-95. And again, by abandoning some of those wells, we are able to minimize the saltwater intrusion over time. One of the things that I think is interesting is we actually produced 1.7 billion gallons of water last year. That's a number, it's everybody knows it's big, but it's a little hard to understand what that means. So I looked at it in terms of an Olympic swimming pool, which is 150 feet long, about 75 feet wide, and 5 or 6 feet deep. We actually produced 2,575 Olympic-sized swimming pools of water in the last year, just to give you an idea of the quantity of water that's produced by our plant. The average water flow was about 4.7 million gallons a day, and we serve 12,700 customers, which is equivalent to 21,700 residential families in the city. We have a 20-year permit from South Florida Water Management District, which again goes along to the sustainability and the flexibility that the district recognizes that we have and has been worked at for many years. That includes the surficial source. We have a capacity of 5.2 million gallons, and the Floridan 6 million gallons. Again, our lime plant capacity is larger than that. It's about 12 million gallons, so about twice as big as our well capacity. And the Floridan plant is 4.5 million. So we have both the well capacity and the plant capacity to be sustainable and to allow for additional people to come back into the city. Yes, sir.
Vice Mayor.
Yes, Eric, can you tell us what is the maximum amount of water we can put out per day with all of our resources?
Well, with basically it would be about essentially it would be 11.5 million gallons a day on an average day basis that we could put out per the South Florida Water Management permit.
So we're doing a little bit less than half of what we are capable and allowed to produce.
That's correct.
Okay, so we do have a tremendous amount of flexibility. And the other question I have is I've lost a little bit of track of time. We were obligated to buy water from the county for a certain period of time. Are we no longer obligated to buy water?
Yes, so we completed that contractual arrangement about a year ago, I
Okay.
believe, and so we have not bought any further water.
Thank you.
Commissioner Wilson.
And we do have the ability to sell water to other municipalities. Are we working towards that goal? Are we doing anything that might help us, start selling water to other municipalities?
Commissioner, we're having discussions with other municipalities in terms of that. Is that all of the municipalities in the area, they have relatively good capacity for the short term, and so these kinds of plans require, it's basically a long-term planning requirement. So we are working with others but it will be probably be a long-term commitment before we get additional major capacity. We do have a municipal contract with Lake Plug Shores to provide them, water, and we remain active in terms of trying to promote that capability.
Commissioner Reed?
Thank you, Mayor. Larry, so we have a couple thousand residential units very dysfunctional right now in the city, and a certain percent, a small one, of vacant property, but that would be about a 10% increase if all of them became more active again in there. So you have a lot more capacity. What would you anticipate, considering, I guess it's a loaded question, but people are pretty good at water conservation. I know my house, we're under 50 gallons of water a day per person, but in there, 95 is still a very good, consumption level, good conservative, not a lot. So my question would be, if the city started to recover all of its units and people moved in and were, getting more families, and we get business at the Park of Commerce and so on, if you looked ahead to see what might be a maximum demand that the city could anticipate in 5 or 10 years, even down the line?
Commissioners, I think one way to look at that is that the water plant was actually producing about 7 million gallons a day on average back in the 2004-2005 timeframe, when the economy was going better and we had more of the homes were filled in terms of that level. So I would anticipate that we've certainly gotten better with water conservation, so we would continue that mode, and we're still serious about continuing that water conservation effort. But I would anticipate that there's at least the potential to get from the 4.7 to up in the something in the 5 to 6 range, basically as the city refills itself with.
But substantially less than our capacity, so
Yeah.
we have a long-term potential to pursue those interests to.
Yes.
to
So we
whatever.
have
But
the capacity to both respond to our residents as well as business that may come in, and then also potentially to do more with that.
we're always looking for utilities that we, because of the tax basis and all, are pulling money out of, but it would be great for it to put money back in. Like you've been working on that, so there is a good potential for this to occur.
Yeah, and we will be talking about, one of the things that I'll be talking about as part of the policies and procedures approach is to talk about expansion policies to get your direction and review of. So those are things that we'll be looking at as part of the effort to do policies and procedures for the department.
Commissioner McWhite?
Thank you, Mayor. This is all extremely helpful, I think, keeping us informed that we have the 2 sources of water, the Sufficial Aquifer and the Floridian, and that both in terms of our well capacity and our plant capacity, both on RO and the lime softening, we're underusing, so we have room to expand, which is all good. What perhaps we're not, 2 things that I'd like to highlight a little bit is that they're not totally comparable sources, as we've discussed at some previous meetings. The RO water is, in terms of energy usage, much more expensive. It's a much higher usage of energy, because that's what's doing the cleaning, is you're pumping, putting electricity in to get clean water out. So to some extent, we get some benefit from shifting the balance over back to the Sufficial, if I'm not mistaken on that. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, Commissioner.
The other concern that I have, because I've looked again, I just saw them recently, the most recent water management district maps of salinity intrusion up and down the east coast, or I think it was Broward and Palm Beach counties. And of course, what you see is what you'd expect, that most of the saltwater intrusion runs pretty parallel to the coast, and then you get these divots in. There's one in Boynton Beach, there's one for us, and I forget what the other one was. But the folks that have coastal wells pull that saltwater in. I mean, there's just no question that you can see it, and there's no ambiguity to that. The place where it's a little bit less clear is what are we doing with the trend? And some of those wells, the salinity trend is still climbing. And one of the things that I asked for when we agreed to move one of the wells west of 95, which my concern was, I understood why we were using that location for practical and cost reasons. It's a lot more expensive to go further west, but I said, all right, I don't think that's very far in from what we're doing now, in terms of the big picture of the shape of that deviation from the coastal saltwater intrusion. My request was that we we beef up our monitoring wells a little bit more, add a few, because it looked to me like our network of those was not terribly extensive. Have we added any monitoring wells?
Commissioners, we have not added wells, but what we've done is rehab some of the monitoring wells in the area, particularly the ones that were directly in line with well 16 and that area, so that we would be able to monitor that area better. There were some problems in terms of being able to actually get data from some of those existing ones, and so one of the things we have done this year is to go back and
Flush them
rehab
out.
that well.
I guess what I'd request to you, just because we are thinking, I think, in these discussions of perhaps selling water to other folks, which would be an increase on our well draw, I would request that perhaps you provide us with a map of where the existing monitor wells are, and then some trend graphs, which you might be able to get from Water Management District if we don't have the data, on the salinities, just so that we can kind of keep an eye on how we're doing. And I guess, a reason that we've talked about before, our boundary condition that's driving salinity intrusion is increasing rather than decreasing. So we want to be on top of it more rather than less. So if you could get us a map of that and the graphs of the trends, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Mayor, just for information, as part of answering that question, is every year we have our engineer, Mark Bruce, prepare an engineering report for the water system, which does include evaluation of the wells and the water plant and things like that. So I will get back with them and we'll provide that requested data. But these annual reports are meant to provide that kind of an update.
Okay, I know we've got a lot,
Great,
I know we've got a number of things on here, so let's
I'll try to keep moving.
keep moving, Larry.
As we've talked about the water conservation, we are a leader in water conservation. That still remains one of our strong areas. The system challenges that I just mentioned to you is the high flushing rate that we have due to the water quality issues, particularly because of the distribution lines. The corroded water piping that we've talked about, and certainly not enough hydrants. These are some performance measures. I won't go into a lot of detail with this, but the point, and I'll just point out two of them. The water system revenues amounts to about $1.12 per 100 gallons of water produced. If you go to the Publix or to the store, you're not going to get $1 for, you'll get about 1 gallon for that price, and not 100.
Should we be bottling?
Actually, the bottling is very expensive, so it's difficult to do, at the scale that we'd be able to. The other one to just mention, and these are things that the city manager has asked us to do as departments, is to provide a system performance measure so that it could be evaluated against other utility areas and other performances around the city and the country. The customers per employee, We are, you know, at about 470 customers per employee in the water system, versus a benchmark nationwide of about 504. So we're very close to that benchmark on a nationwide basis. And for this small of a system to be that close is a testament to, you know, maintaining the efficiency of the system. The only other one I'll mention is the, you know, the water main breaks. We do have a lot of water main breaks, which, you know, we've discussed, and that's certainly something that's a concern. And our unaccounted water is actually relatively good at about 10%. That's sort of the limit that we would like to maintain.
And the breaks mostly due to the conditions of the,
Yeah, they're basically due to the condition of the piping and just particularly the 2-inch water piping that we find is a major part of the problem.
not that big old rusty pipe at the start of your presentation.
Yes, unfortunately it is. Looking at the wastewater system, this just gives you a couple of views. The drawing, or the picture on the left is basically repairing a force main that was in Boutwell Road that has broken about 4 times there in Boutwell Road over the last several years, and is typical of the kinds of repairs that our crews do, you know, throughout the city. The picture on the right is the master pump station, which is a, you know, very up-to-date pump station designed for about 20 million gallons a day. And just, again, I'll go through this quickly, but we do have about 100 miles of piping. There are 31 pump stations that we take care of. And the master pump station, which was the picture I just showed you, has 4 400 horsepower pumps, each, you know, with a total capacity of about 20 million gallons a day. And we actually hit that 20 million gallon a day capacity this year during one of the very heavy rainstorms back in the beginning of the year. So the designers did it right. We do, the treatment and recycling is done by the East Central Region plant in West Palm Beach, owned by 5 municipalities, including ourselves. It does reuse that treated water and also recycles the solids into fertilizer through the county. Again, we pumped about 1.7 billion gallons of wastewater, about the same amount as the water, which is surprising. It's actually high compared to the amount of water that we pumped. And again, it goes to the system challenges are the high flows due to infiltration and inflow that we're seeing. And we have a large number of sewer backups, particularly due to heavy grease buildups. And that is a continual issue.
Aren't there regulations on the grease disposal through the?
Yes, there are, and again, we are trying to, as part of the regulation and the policies and procedures, we're going to be recommending that we address those grease situations more aggressively in the future.
Thank you, Mayor. Larry, are you able to tell where the influx of that, you know, that grease is coming from? And obviously it would be more from our downtown, I think, from restaurants and stuff, but I mean, is it from other areas too? I mean, where we have, I know I've been in the water treatment business for many, many years, and it's a real headache.
Mayor and Commissioners, a lot of the grease buildup, it does come from the commercial facilities, in particular, you know, restaurants and that type of thing. We'll really talk about this more as we get into the policies and procedures, but one of the things we are doing right now is our sewer collection folks are actually working with the building and zoning code enforcement people to start identifying for each of the commercial facilities, whether they even have a grease trap, and then, whether they need one for the type of business that they're doing. We don't currently have that information available or readily available, and so we're starting the process of going through and investigating those, and we're talking about essentially doing more of a regulatory process associated with that. The other area that I think is important is we have an awful lot of automotive repair.
I was just gonna ask you that, is that the only type of grease?
And that, there's definitely a concern about waste oil separation as well. And so as part of this effort, we'll be trying to identify that kind of commercial facility as well.
Okay, wonderful. Mr. McBoy?
Yeah, I'm glad you highlighted the sewage pump level, the 1.7 billion in total year and 4.7 million gallons a day average. That's for Lake Worth, not for the regional system, that's for the local system, correct?
That's correct.
And that is interesting, because my recollection is that typically the number people use is US-wide, not necessarily South Florida-wide, but is that about half of your residential use is for irrigation, which presumably doesn't make it into the sewer, at least not intentionally, which means we're pumping, almost twice what you would expect.
Yeah, the last item there is basically talking about that, where the ratio of wastewater is typically, and I said typically 0.7, it can range from 0.5 to 0.7 in terms of, water to wastewater flow. And for us to be at 1.0, which means we've got the same amount of wastewater as is costing us a lot of money operationally, because we pay for that treatment, and it is also indicating that there's a significant amount of inflow coming into the system.
Although, I forget who I talked with, I don't remember if it was you or somebody out in the field, but I thought that we were doing some fairly sophisticated relining, in situ relining of a lot of our sewer pipes as a retrofit, and can you give me a sense of how much of the network we've done that on, and how that jives or doesn't jive with the infiltration?
We've been doing relining of manholes and of certain of the sewer systems. And I think where we've done that, it's been successful, but it's a small proportion of the system so far. And as an example, 6th Avenue South is one of the collectors that we're looking at now that needs to have a significant lining done, and there's several other ones that we know we need to get to, and they are part of the capital program that we will be bringing to commission.
Okay.
Thank you.
Please continue.
Just completed construction projects. I thought this was good